Are online knitting friends real friends, or is the internet just not that serious? If you're new here, this is the Apiary, a knitting podcast, and I'm Lauren Rad. I design knitting patterns with a focus on accessories, especially socks. And I'm here with my friend Aimee, who is also a designer at Aimee Share Makes. And guess what? We became friends on the internet, so we have a lot of thoughts on this topic. Aimee, what do you remember about when we first started getting to know each other?
I feel like it was in the early days of knitting Instagram, back when things were rosy and we were all just posting our silly little makes on our grid with no aesthetics. But you stood out to me as a very aesthetic designer with a really beautiful curated grid in a time when the grid was much more casual. So I became a follower and a fan during probably like a Me Made May or something like that when I went out of my way to look for people to follow. Slowly we became friends. I That sounds creepy, like I'm a groupie who was determined to become your friend, but, I think that's the nature of the knitting internet, and I think a lot of our viewers will relate to kind of like the serendipitous ways that we meet other knitters who have the same interests and similar aesthetics and similar values to us on the internet.
Right. And it's funny because that is more or less how I remember our paths crossing too, except in reverse. Like I remember seeing your page and thinking, oh, wow, these are really pretty knits. And I'm really interested in what this person is up to, and I would like to get to know them better. So I think it was definitely a mutual
Mutual stalking.
curiosity in each other's work. And I think, as you and I have both talked about as we've ventured into our design careers too, we have aesthetics that are not the same, but they're cousins to each other. And so I think recognizing that shared interest kind of helped open the door to friendship.
Yeah, and I think we have very similar goals with our businesses and with our making practice and um, in our habits, and that has really aligned. The stars have really aligned for our businesses to grow and bloom, kind of at the same time as each other. And they're not exactly the same. We have. If you're a viewer and you've watched previous episodes on both our channels of us talking together, we have vastly different business models, but in the end, our goals are very similar and we remain really aligned. And it's really exciting to see the way kind of we started, not knowing what laid ahead and where all the forks are, and then to see us both taking different paths and then occasionally coming back together to regroup and see what's going on. That's been a really exciting part of our friendship.
Yeah, I think one of the neat things about being on this journey together is you can't see the top of the staircase, but you can see the next kind of two or three, maybe four stairs ahead of you. And I don't know about you, but I get a little nervous when I can't see my end destination, but I'm less nervous when I have somebody walking with me. And so I think, having that kinship and that parallel journey and that emotional support makes a real difference.
I think this is something that a lot of knitters will relate to, but it is that question of like if you're a process knitter or if you're a product knitter. And I'm very much like in my knitting journey, I'm very much like a product. I want to see that end point, but I have to remember like I like knitting. I like being on this journey with you and with my friends. Just generally, I like being a knitting pattern designer. Like it's not all about go, 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 go. It's like, sometimes I have to remind myself to slow down and kind of stay grounded in the moment, and having colleagues who are in that same place is very helpful for that.
Yeah, definitely. One of the things I think that comes up a lot when people talk about friendships that started on the internet, and as we mentioned, you and I found each other via Instagram.
Mhm.
I think a lot of people think, oh, internet friendships, like if you don't see each other in person, it's not real. But you and I have hung out in person once, and I don't feel like that friendship is any less real because how many different channels of communication do we
Oh
have
my
now at
god.
this point? Like
The struggle
there will
is
be
so
there will be
real.
days where sometimes I'm sending an Instagram DM to Aimee and sending text messages at the same time and also sending a funny TikTok video that I saw that I thought you'd like. Like we are
Some
constantly pinging
days
each other.
but some days we don't talk at all, and then,
Mhm.
like, there's, like, a pile of really funny TikTok videos in my inbox that I can just scroll through and enjoy, and that's, like, the nature of like a laid back friendship, I think, where we check in, but then we don't always have to know exactly what the other person is up to. That's been like a really nice and easy friendship, I think.
Yes, definitely. And I am very much one of those people where like for me, I feel like a good friendship is a friendship where the friends are friends with each other and do things together because they want to be there and not because they feel like they need to be there. And so, you actively choose to spend time together or to have conversations with each other during the times that you're together, but you don't feel the need to constantly always be checking up on each other. I feel like it's nice to find friends who are on the same wavelength in terms of understanding that you connect during the times when you're connecting, and it's okay to have space during the times when you're not actively conversing with each other.
So I think my partner is very much like you. Like he'll go years without talking to people and then they're best friends again when they see each other. I do think that like I'm more on the other end of the spectrum. Like there's a little push and pull where sometimes I'm like, oh, I need to water this friendship and maintain it and make sure that I didn't just disappear off the face of the planet because I'm very prone to disappearing off of the I'm not good at being the first person to reach out a lot of times. So for me, I do need to kind of be intentional about that. But I do wonder, I wanted to ask you, like, what do you think makes the online knitting community such a tight knit community? Because we are not the only ones to have a friendship like this. I feel like almost everybody I know in knitting has close knit friends or groups of friends online. And what is it about this particular community that has created this interesting online infrastructure, I guess?
Yeah, I think there's probably a few factors at play here. I think one is even though there are millions of us, and even though we are always saying, knitting's not dead, it is comparatively a niche hobby. There are a lot fewer knitters than there are, I don't even know.
Gamers,
Yeah, yeah,
my other
maybe.
niche hobbies.
Definitely there are still not that many of us out there. There are
Yes.
more of us than people might expect from outside the knitting community, but there still aren't that many of us.
Mm.
And so the sheer joy of finding somebody else who loves the thing you love already primes the pump, I think, for building a good friendship. I also think that there are elements of knitting that draw certain personalities, and then that leads to compatibility. So, like, if you are interested in knitting, you're probably interested in kind of handmade things in general. You probably are interested in trying to live your life a little more slowly.
Analog hobbies,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
stationery and things like that.
exactly. Like, I feel like there are a lot of overlapping interests that knitters share that have roots in characteristics of knitting. And so that helps kind of pave the way for a friendship as well.
I think people are always surprised when I say that when I go to a fiber festival, it's like a big like comic convention but with knitters. And that really surprises people that this hobby is so intense that we have these like at Rhinebeck Sheep and Wool Festival, I had it in my notes to meet up with Tashi from Tangles and Starlight, who I'll put in the description box below. But I was like, okay, I'm gonna meet up with Tashi this morning, and then they know all the things about the fleece barn, so I'm gonna just follow them and buy a fleece. But when I actually got there in the morning, they were running. They were like booking it to the fleece barn to be one of the first people in the door. And I think people don't expect knitters to be this hardcore.
Mm.
Like, but we are. We are. We can be.
Yes, we can go deep down rabbit holes on, breed specific yarns and different dye techniques and, what kind of heel construction is the right heel for your particular sock and how do you adjust the grading on a sweater to get the right fit across 9 sizes. Like we can get down in the weeds,
Yeah.
and I love that about us.
I ran. I ran all the way there with Tashi. And then once we got in the barn, I didn't see them again for like an hour. We were just going around like pinging the, sniffing the wool and just being
Love sniffing the wool.
general general gremlins being real weirdos. And I think we each walked out with way too much wool, but that's like, the shared hobby is like those moments of solidarity as you run to whatever it is that you're running to, and with this exciting thing that happens once a year.
Yeah, I mean, you made a comment there that I think is really important, which is being weirdos in the barn. And I think there is an element of that for a lot of us in that because it is kind of a niche hobby,
Mhm.
a lot of us have had the experience in our lives of people thinking that we're kind of weirdos for being really interested in sheep and yarn construction and knitting things and, spending 20 hours on something that's going to go on our feet. To people outside the knitting world, that does look kind of weird. And so it's nice to be around people who don't think you're weird and share your interests.
And you can be yourself. You can
Mhm.
be openly who you are in that moment without having to mask or hide or try to fit into like a non-knitting world who as a person who's too interested in wool and knitting.
Do you think that the nature of the online knitting community reinforces or minimizes the likelihood that people are going to meet up in person?
I think it reinforces. I think if we are financially able, a lot of us do go out of our way to meet up at fiber festivals. I've, become Airbnb roomies with people I've met online, which if you had told my parents that in 1998, they would have had a heart attack. And yeah, I don't think the online community replaces the in person communities. I think local yarn shops are incredibly important, but there's also as many styles of knitting and crochet as there are knitters and crocheters. So sometimes the kind of knitting that you might enjoy or the kind of yarns that you love to gush over may not be the kind that comes up a lot in your local knitting groups. And I think the more niche you get into a hobby, the more you seek out people tend to seek out people online who have those same specific sub niches. Like I don't know that many people who process sheep in my area. I just don't. And that's because like as few knitters as there are, there's even fewer people processing fleas. So I think as we dive into more rabbit holey parts of a hobby, we naturally congregate with people online instead. And that doesn't replace in-person community. It's just different.
Yeah, it's interesting. It feels almost like a reinforcing cycle where like I got to know the owner of my local yarn shop in part because I had seen her post for the yarn shop online and I was like, "Oh, that looks like a cute shop. I would like to go check it
Mhm.
out." And then we got to know each other and then we became Instagram friends and then I saw more of her posts and she saw more of my posts and it made me more likely to go into the yarn shop and go hang out and want to do projects together. So I feel like having
Now,
that
if we were
online
very
place.
cynical, one would call that marketing.
Yeah. And yet, it's more than that, right?
Hmm.
Because you
It
get to
is.
know people and then you build connections with each other and it becomes this whole community there. I think the flip side of that is that a lot of people live in places where there isn't a local yarn shop, right? So either they're very rural and so there's just not enough people to support a local yarn store, or the economics of running a local yarn store are really challenging. It is hard to keep one open. It's a significant outlay at the front and then the economics of keeping it going are challenging.
You know,
So
I was
it's
talking
tough.
to Heather from my local yarn shop, the owner, and I told her like some days trying to keep this online yarn shop open is so hard and the profit margins are so thin and I don't have insurance. And some days I think about quitting and then going to be like an admin or secretary at the local university so I can get the good benefits and like free tuition for my kids one day and all of those things. And then she was like, "Do you want that though? You're in it for the love of the game, like, you just love yarn, so a lot of it is marketing, yes, but
Mhm.
also, like, if I just wanted to make money, I would not be in yarn."
Right. Like, is it marketing? Yes. Would I be able to market this well if I didn't love the work? Mm-mm.
Mhm. That's right, and I do think there is the flip side of this, which is that sometimes these relationships can be kind of one-sided or parasocial, and then some of us can get into kind of like emotionally or even physically unsafe spaces. I see this a lot more in gaming spaces, particularly. So I am cautious of that, and I am cautious to kind of protect my privacy online and share only like specific snippets and things like that. But somehow, even through all of that, we're still forming these friendships. We're still making connections, and like in the DMs, we can get into deeper friendships, and that's a really beautiful thing, I think. And I think it mirrors what happens in real life too.
I think so too, because when you make a friend at school or at work, you don't instantly become best friends, right?
Mhm.
You talk to each other during breaks, or you have lunch with each other, or you play on the playground at recess. And then maybe someone's mom calls someone else's mom and says, "Hey, you want to meet up at the park for a while?" Or, if you're a teenager, you go, "Hey, you want to go to the Starbucks across the street and grab some coffee after school?" And then the friendship evolves into different layers of depth as you get to know each other better and figure out whether, you share interests and values and whether you feel safe with each other. And
Yeah.
then it blooms naturally. And I think the same is true for online
That doesn't
friendships.
make your online friendships that are not at that level any less valid and any less deep than they are. I think they're all meaningful in different ways. And it's just been really nice to get to know you and also grow together in our craft and in our business.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the progression of online friendships mirrors that real life progression just in a different format, right? So, instead of having snacks together and then having a play date at the playground and then growing up and having sleepovers, you might drop some likes on each other's photos and then you have a conversation in the comments and then maybe you have conversations in DMs and then you go, "Oh, I saw this thing that reminded me of my online friend. I'm going to send it to them," because now you know them well enough that you know what they're going to like. And the friendship grows in its own way. It's
There's
it's
a
still
meme that's
growing.
like most best friendships just end up in a chat where it's just videos that you found online back and forth. You communicate purely in video memes.
Well, that about does it for us for this installment. But if you've made online friends too, we would really love to hear about the stories of the friendships that you've made either through the knitting community online or maybe through some other space. And let us know how those friendships developed and what they mean to you. Otherwise, thanks for being here with me and Aimee for another one of our periodic check ins. You can find both of us on our respective channels. And if you want to make sure that you don't miss any of our updates, make sure to subscribe to both, hit the like button, maybe turn on notifications if you really want to make sure you don't miss them. We'll drop all of our contact info in the description down below. Otherwise, thanks for being here, and we'll see you next time.